The Arrival. Despite having lived in Bangalore for 23 years, I couldn't speak Kannada very well. I was married to a tall and fair Brahmin boy born and raised in the city. Shekhar, my husband, had a very small circle of friends, but even with them, I would often feel out of place. As the sunshine beamed through the multicolored curtains, I tied my hair loosely in a bun and walked towards my son's bedroom, pondering over a list of things I needed to complete before his arrival. Tucking the corners of the bedsheet under the mattress, I placed two large pillows on the bed. I began clearing an old stack of newspapers when a thin book slipped and fell on my feet. Curious, I bent down to pick it up and adjusted the spectacles resting on my fleshy nose. It read, Amar Chitra Katha. Karthik never gravitated towards reading mythological stories, I mumbled to myself. Putting on a reminiscent smile, I quickly flipped through the pages of young princes and soldiers fighting bravely on the battlefields. The divine was showcased in all its glory and grandeur. Suddenly, I paused at page 32. The rhythmic beat of my silver anklets seemed to reflect my loneliness as I gradually walked towards the rocking chair to read the book, lost in thought. Karna, the tragic hero of the epic tale Mahabharata, an accomplished warrior of extraordinary abilities, was also an accidental love child rejected at birth. But nature being kind had ushered him into the lap of a nurturing family. As I read through the story, a familiar but fragile voice spoke from within me. I rocked myself to and fro as my mind's eye journeyed back to the days in Srinagar. The icy roads and avalanches made it hard to travel during the winters. I lived with my father, K.L. Raghunath, in a small rented house on top of Jahangir Bakery. It was located in a busy market street. Like other houses in the mohalla, the bedrooms were small. The walls and flooring were shielded in wood. We barely spoke to each other after he learnt about my pregnancy. I've kept the medicines on the table, Malati, he said, and walked out of the room curtly. Moments like these drew a deep sense of gratitude, but also overtook a sea of confused emotions. I would break down every day. The concern for my baby was constantly being overshadowed by guilt that pierced straight into my gut. Shame was a permanent tattoo on my face. After 20 long hours of a strenuous delivery, I lay exhausted. At my side was my baby. Overwhelming love and fierce protectiveness gripped me as I heard my father speak over the phone in his strong and deep voice. He cut the call on seeing Geeta auntie in the living room. Geeta auntie was a close family friend who had helped us during our stay there. She stood next to the fireplace wearing a worried look. My father refused to meet her eye, she later told me. In the silence of the evening, I could see their shadows through the curtains. Raghunath, Malati is a very sensitive girl. This will become an irreparable tragedy if you refuse to even see her. After all, she's your only daughter, she said, sounding distressed. Am I not doing my duty as a father? He asked, looking at her enraged. A child born out of wedlock is a sin. If it was anybody else in my place, he would have thrown her out by now. He immediately got up from his seat and lit his pipe. Blowing out the smoke slowly, he began to pace the wooden floor with a feverish haste. The clock struck 3. Malati realizes her mistake, Raghu. And this is not just her fault, and you know that too. We need to handle this on a practical level without losing sight of its psychological implications. Right now, she's insecure, guilty, and battling a deep emotional turmoil all by herself. Look, I understand her mother's death was sudden and came as a shock to all of us. My father spoke, standing in front of her. For a long time, Malati just didn't have the ability to accept and process grief. But that simply cannot justify the illicit relationship she had with our neighbor's boy. What do you expect of me, Geeta? Pat her back? Sing her baby a lullaby? Oh, for God's sake, Raghu. She's only 19. There was an empty void in her that no one could fill after Kamala's demise. Until, of course, Girish came along. She said, lowering her head. See, this is what one moment of weakness can do to you. Did she think of me? Did she think of how it could impact her future? Did she think at all? Geeta, our destiny is shaped by our actions and decisions, he argued, wearing a stoic look on his face. To err is human, Raghunath. You can't be so harsh on her for just one moment of weakness. She deserves a second chance, don't you think? Well, and that's why I have fixed her marriage with my client's son, my father said, gripping the pipe tightly in his hand. She'll be moving to Bangalore soon after the wedding. And as for the baby, it will be sent off to an orphanage. I've explained everything to Jamuna. A heavy silence settled over the living room, thicker than the uneasy tension that had erupted. My decision is final and irrevocable, he said, stomping out. I left for Hyderabad 2 days later, alone with my heavy heart. I removed my tear-stained glasses and kept the book on the side table. My palms were drenched in perspiration. Across me was an old photograph of my son crawling on his fours. For a moment, her tiny fingers and sleepy yawn crept into my mind. I'm sorry, I whispered to myself as my heart tore into pieces.